Hello, my name is Noel Kingsbury, and with my colleague Annie Guilfoyle, we put on Garden Masterclass. We thought we should put this little introduction to Garden Masterclass together for those of you who've not come across us before but have arrived at our YouTube channel. We aim to put on one-day educational events with the most creative and innovative people in the garden and landscape world up and down the British Isles, and that includes the Republic of Ireland. We've also started looking at putting on events on the European mainland, and this year we had one planned in France, one in Germany, and 3 in the Netherlands. Of course, our physical events this year are having to be rescheduled, but we're trying to do what we can online. Our events take place in garden environments where there's plenty to look at. And here we've got Nigel Dunnett, for example, in Trenton Gardens, discussing with a group the planting he has put together there. Or Sarah Price, the award-winning garden designer, talking about using drawing as a design tool at Treberwith Nursery in South Wales. Here, Marina Christopher, who runs a wonderful perennial nursery in the southeast of England at Parham House, talking about how she puts together perennials for effective planting design. And landscape architect and urban sketcher Liz Ackley talking about using drawing as a design tool for people in the landscape and garden design business. Since coronavirus has constrained what we do, we've gone online. Increasingly, we are hoping to run in-depth webinars. However, for the moment, what we're offering is every Monday and Friday at 4 o'clock London time, a broadcast, round about an hour, with information, education, and some entertainment. We talk with somebody from the garden world, we look at what they're doing, perhaps sometimes we'll have a panel. So far, we've had people from Britain, Ireland, Italy, and the United States. We've got plans to speak to people in Argentina, Ukraine, Lithuania, Japan, New Zealand. So we are pretty global. Our aim is to bring together gardeners all over the world to share experiences and see us through this difficult time. If you'd like to keep in touch, do please look at our website, or if you want to receive our occasional email newsletter, then do send us an email to gardenmasterclass@gmail.com and we'll put you on our mailing list, which of course will go no further than us. So we hope to meet you online, and hopefully one day we may even meet you in the flesh. Goodbye, stay safe and enjoy this particular recording.
Today we're up in Cumbria, and for those of you who have no idea where Cumbria is, it's in the northwest part of England. It's pretty much as high as you can go before you hit Scotland. It's the bit that sticks out. It's very, very beautiful, very, very hilly and mountainous and gorgeous, and is known as the Lake District because it's got lakes and it's very, very lovely. So we are going to be talking to Martin Ogle, and Martin is what I would call the head gardener, but of course now it's general manager of Lowther, Lowther Castle Gardens. So welcome, Martin. It's really nice to have you here. Can you just tell us, I know you've got a presentation about the gardens that we're going to look at. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and how long you've been at Lowther before we start? Yeah, certainly. So
yeah, I've been working at Lowther now for 8 years. The project here at Lowther Castle to rediscover and reimagine the gardens began way back when in, I think, 2009. The majority of that was tree felling, removing lots of concrete and things, which I'll come to very, very soon. But yeah, my background kind of started at a very, very young age, really, in horticulture, starting with helping my grandfather in his garden. I remember vividly working underneath a weeping willow which he had in the garden, and it used to tickle the back of your neck when you were clipping the grass edges and mowing the lawn. And from there, when I left school when I was 16, I was fortunate enough to be offered an apprenticeship in horticulture, training at the local college to us, which is Newtonry College. So I trained there for a number of years, went through the NVQ diploma and such forth, and then worked locally on what was a very small private estate. It had polytunnels and glass houses, so I was fortunate that we could do everything from glasshouse work through to estate work. So I had a very varied start to my career, really. And then from there, I decided to go into working in a tree and shrub nursery, which was a more commercial nursery. It was all mail order trees and shrubs. And then during that time, I did a lot of travelling, and travelled quite a lot through Australia, New Zealand, and Tasmania. And when I was out that way, I worked in orchards and tree farms, a bit of agriculture as well. But I never really strayed far from horticulture whilst I was travelling. And as you just pointed out, I think I grew more of a love for the Lake District and Cumbria the more time I spent away from here. And I eventually came back to Cumbria in 2007, and I knew that the project was in the pipeline here at Lowther, and I started looking after a private garden not far from here at Carlisle. But it was very much a garden that was it was general sort of rake the leaves and mow the lawns. It wasn't really a long-term sort of ambition really there. And then come around about 2009, that's when the project really got going here at Lowther, and I started here in 2012, and that was rediscovering the old gardens here at Lowther and starting to implement the new ones.
So you grew up in Cumbria, in the Lake District, did you?
I did, yes, yeah. I did. Yeah, so lots of fond memories of growing up locally, and like I say, I never really had a fondness of the Lake District, or could appreciate it until I was away from here. And it wasn't until I was sort of, particularly in Tasmania, I remember spending a lot of time in Tasmania, wandering around like the really sort of rich forests in Tasmania and the tree ferns, etc., and really began to sort of appreciate landscapes a bit more. So that's when, when I came back to England, I knew what I wanted to do, and it was definitely with horticulture. But I didn't want to be in a garden that was standing still. I wanted to be involved with a garden that was, I guess, constantly moving as well.
Wow.
And obviously what we're doing here at Lowther ticks all the boxes there.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I mean, could you have dreamt up a better job?
Not really. No, not really. No, it's it's been great. Really, really fortunate, all of us that are involved here. And obviously working with the likes of Dan as well. I mean, that's it's brilliant. It really is good.
Yeah. And we can see behind you on the wall there plans of the gardens. And I think to your left shoulder, as we're looking, I'm guessing that's the new rose garden, which I'm sure we're going to see in your presentation. Yeah.
So they're the most recent plans, and then we've got plans over this side of the parterre tapestry garden, and also the garden in the ruins as well, which are another two gardens that we've done working with Dan as well.
Fantastic. So shall we start your presentation? Do you want to, let's try playing with your screen share and hope that it works as smoothly as it did when we were practicing.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, I'm sure it will.
Okay, so this presentation, it's through this presentation, I really just wanted to talk about what goes on in the background, really, and how we've come about to this point where we're implementing these new gardens, and just talk about the people that have been involved so far as well. The gardens here at Lowther, they've existed on this site now for over 400 years, and this original footprint that you see here in the landscape, it hasn't really changed. Over on the right hand side of the screen there, you can see these early knot gardens, which were very, very fashionable of the time. This is the mid 1600s, and the chap who lived in this building here was Sir John Lowther. He was quite a rare man of his time. He was a vegetarian, and he used current horticultural fashions to feed his obsession with fruit and vegetables. So all these gardens that you see here are laid out for the production of fruit and vegetables instead of flowers and ornamentals. In more recent times, this is an image from 1930s. This is the building that we've been left with. This is what we call Lowther 3. And the gardens have moved on considerably from that first slide. Very, very ornamental gardens. And again, Lowther was very, very known for keeping up with the horticultural fashions of that time period. The last chap who lived in the castle ruin was a chap called the Yellow Earl, or he's more formally known as the Yellow Earl, basically because he had a love of the colour yellow. He was the 5th Earl of Lonsdale, and he was a very, very elaborate chap. Spent vast quantities of money on entertaining the rich and famous here at Lowther, and had a huge obsession with motor vehicles, as you can see, but also the obsession stretched into the garden as well. And horticultural fashions change all of the time, and at this particular time period, Lowther was always at the forefront of horticultural fashion. And this picture here, we think this is the picture of the last rose garden that was here before we've started doing these plans, which are over my shoulder here that you saw earlier. We think that Thomas Mawson was responsible for these gardens, not just the rose garden, responsible for some of the other gardens as well, such as the iris garden and also the sweet scented garden. This is an aerial image, excuse me, that was taken again around about the 1930s, and you can see the extent of the gardens here. That what you see in the foreground is a garden called the Pat d'Oie, and that's French for foot of the goose. So you've got this goose's footprint on the hillside there, and then down below you've got the south lawns, and then beyond. You can just about see the corner of the old rose garden, and then through the trees there you've got places like the Japanese garden and the rock garden as well. There was lots of glass houses and elaborate orangeries as well during this time period. So lots of wealth spent in the gardens, and lots of a wide range of plants which have been collected by the Yellow Earl as he travelled around the world on his world tours. And they were these world tours that the Yellow Earl did very much influenced the gardens that were here before us. So this picture here, this is the old Japanese garden. This was set out in around about 1902, 1903, following a world tour that Lord and Lady Lonsdale did prior to then. This is one of the areas that we're looking at redeveloping in the near future. Along with the rock garden as well. The rock garden again is another one of the gardens that we will look at doing a new planting plan in the near future. We've been working with volunteers in this space for a number of years now, trying to understand the previous layout. And we understand the previous garden now, and whilst we've been working in this area, we've discovered over 200 plant labels in this space. So all these lovely old plant labels give a great understanding of what was grown in the garden before us. Sorry, that chiming that you can hear is you maybe heard that chiming, did you then? That's the courtyard clock, so apologies if that chimes frequently. Come around about the mid to late 1930s, this picture shows the garden when the castle and gardens had actually been abandoned. The Yellow Earl, he had done a marvellous job of spending most of the family wealth, and come 1937, the garden was last open, and basically began this process of neglect and decay, which we've been starting to unpick in more recent times. And then, come 1942, the British Army, part of the regiment staying here at Lowther, the British Army requisitioned the site and used Lowther as a place to test secret tank weapons during the war. In 1944, the Yellow Earl sadly passed away. He left huge death duties to pay, and during the mid-40s into the mid-50s, lots of items from inside the castle and the garden as well were sold off in some grand sales to raise money for those death duties. And come 1957, the castle and gardens had been abandoned for some time now, and eventually the roof was taken off the castle ruin, and everything was kind of ruinized, really. Another one here from sort of late 1950s, early 1960s. This is actually the north side of the castle, so you can see the roof has been removed, and this is now when, like I say, the garden has started this journey of neglect and decay. Moving on a number of years, the concrete that was left behind by the army, that was now the site of a commercial chicken farm. So several broiler sheds positioned on the concrete, and this commercial operation started on there. And then the garden was still there, really, under the undergrowth. And then in the sort of the mid 1950s, 60s into the 70s, there was a number of crops of trees planted throughout the gardens. A number of different ages of trees here and there all over, which were still beginning to, or still felling as we speak, really. And this was, like I say, these sort of the dark days, really. And the castle and gardens began this dormancy of around about 80 years. It was until we started felling these trees. This was in around about 2008, 2009. Large areas of the trees that were planted started to be felled, and all of the concrete that was laid and left behind by the army, we started removing all of that and removing all of the chicken sheds. It's worth pointing out that at this particular time, the current owner, Jim Lowther, he inherited this site, and working with Brian Gray, who's the chairman of our of Lowther Castle and Gardens Trust. It was actually the brainchild of Jim and Brian, that we do something with these with this monument, and also the grounds that are here, and attempt to open this up to the public, create a well-known visitor attraction, and create a hub for tourism here in North Cumbria and the Lake District. As part of the first phase in this project work, the lawns was the first major project that we did. So all of that concrete was removed, and we actually worked on this project with Dominic Cole, who's had a lot to do with the Lost Gardens of Helligan and also the Eden project as well. And Dominic helped us to come up with the design of the layout of the new lawns. And previously, as you look at this slide here, the lawns fell on a slope from right to left, and what we decided to do here was actually level the landscape up, so that you get this everlasting view from this southern end of the lawns, right the way back towards the castle ruins. So we have around about 2.5 acres of lawns, surrounded by perennial wildflowers either side. As the project was getting going in the garden, there was obviously lots of work going on the castle ruin, lots of building work taking place. You can see in the courtyard on the left of the big picture, that's now the hub of our new visitor attraction, and lots of skilled local tradesmen working on the castle ruin. And like I say, in the distance there on the bottom picture, you can see the lawns well underway. Again, lots of work in the courtyard. And this picture, the bigger picture on the right there, that's you'll see some more pictures of that shortly, which is now the site of our new parterre tapestry garden. So come around about 2012, that's when we teamed up with, or prior to that really, we teamed up with Dan Pearson, and we needed to, we obviously had to set a vision for the future. And previously there's been up to 50 or 60 gardeners working here at Lowther Castle. The grounds are quite extensive. There's about 130 acres of grounds here. And having 50 or 60 gardeners is definitely unsustainable for us here. And we had to think of ways how we can maintain these gardens, make them sustainable for the future, but again take a bit of inspiration from previous times when the gardens were very influential and innovative and at the forefront of design. And I'm sure we would all agree that Dan is kind of a master at what he does. He's very, very good at creating a sense of place and atmosphere. And that's very, very much what we want people to experience when they come and visit the gardens here at Lowther. We've been blessed with adopting this wonderful space that was completely consumed with undergrowth, brambles, nettles, thistles, sycamores, and but they really work to create this lovely sense of place and atmosphere. And the key thing for this project is not to lose that, and not to become a garden which is over-gardened and requires an abundance of maintenance. So the inspiration that we've taken for the garden is two gardens that's in Italy. So the gardens of Ninfa, which I'm sure we all know is some of the most romantic gardens in the world, and also another garden which is pictured here of Terrecchia, which is another garden that Dan has worked on. And these gardens are very true to the place, really. They have some lovely planting. I was lucky enough to go and visit those two gardens, a couple of years ago, and I was just blown away by the exceptional planting and the use of the ruins and and how these all play a part of creating this atmosphere and sense of place. And these are some pictures here of what we've inherited. You know, some of these lovely stone relics, and it's important not to lose this atmosphere that we've been blessed with. You know, there will be a certain amount of removal of undergrowth and sycamores and trees and things to recover some of these layouts and these old gardens. But it's important that the new plantings that really play a part in what we're doing going forward, so they recapture this, like I say, this sense of place and atmosphere. This picture here is the Japanese garden, which was the you saw the picture earlier on. So in 2013, that's when we really sort of stepped up and following the proposals that Dan gave to us, which set out the goals for the future of the garden, and we started with a very simple project, or I say simple. It was a very, very easy project to get going with, which was grafting lots of fruit trees for our new orchard. And we had lots of help with this project in the beginning from the local college and volunteers. So the college here donated us a polytunnel to get going. And in the first year, I think we grafted over 80 apple trees for the new orchard. And then following that, the spring after that, we got going with setting out our new orchard, and we've worked with local orchard groups, the North Cumbria Orchard Group and the South Lakes Orchard Group, in selecting varieties that do well in North Cumbria. And we've also developed a number of apples which have got connections to this local area, so things like Lemon Square, and we've also developed a couple of new apples, and so we've got one called the Yellow Earl, one called the Countess, and also one called Wicked Jimmy, which is very, very exciting. And then coming to about 2014, this is a sketch that Dan gave to us of his vision for the south facade of the castle ruin, and the inspiration for this garden was very much thinking along the lines of thinking of an older, grander scheme, which thinking of the previous building that occupied the site here. Is now and now this building that we have is in a state of ruination, and we've created a tapestry of plants and hedges to give this overall effect of romantic ruination. And on the site here, in a previous slide there, you saw the scaffolding and the building site. Prior to that, it was actually a site where there was pigs and animals. And then another picture here of when the building work was just about complete on the first phase of the castle ruin, and there was a builder's yard in the site of where the parterre now stands. And we very much had this underlying ambition with the project, with everything that we do. We have this very, very much a self-build project. Myself, I have a good background in landscaping as well. Been fortunate enough to be involved in lots of landscaping projects over the years. So I was very willing to take this challenge on, and that ambition with all the projects that we do still stands, in that we have a very much a self-build project. So these are some of the pictures that lots of people will probably never see. Really, these are kind of pictures that were taken throughout the build, and it was very much a spade in the ground and marking out with string lines and spray paint, doing all the hard work. So it was a lot of fun, and again, lots of volunteer input into these gardens. So this garden, like I say, it sits in the footprint of the a previous building that occupied this site, and it took around about seven months to do this garden. And on this one here, you can see it's just sort of finishing off the paths and beginning to plant the yew hedges which occupy this new garden. During this time as well, we put up a new polytunnel which is down in the orchard, and again with the planting, we very much used the expertise of the staff and also volunteers. And one of the first things that we did was started gathering small numbers of plants and utilising the skills of that people had in propagation and splitting and dividing, and buying plants and propagating as much as we could. So we've got Cephalaria there on the top left, which is a plant I remember buying just a few plants of from a local nursery, and also Aster as well, Aster divaricatus. I remember splitting that to within an inch of its life, really, and growing these plants on for this new space. And now we have this, so the Parterre in full bloom. This was taken a couple of years ago now, so it's still quite young planting here. And then I think this one is a more recent time. So you can see how the planting really plays with the building. And like I say, we're really trying to create this planting to give this overriding effect of romance, ruination, sense of place and atmosphere. And the biggest problem we have with this project is actually the castle ruin, because everything's so big, and the castle itself can actually be a bit of a pain sometimes, because it's so big that you can buy plants in their hundreds, in some cases thousands, and put them in the ground, and then straight away they just become lost in this landscape, which is so vast. What you're seeing here is the sort of the second garden that we've implemented on this new layer of horticulture that we're implementing here at Lowther. As you can see, we haven't put the roof back on the castle ruin, and that now stands as a shell, and we're doing lots of work, or continuing our work, to stabilise that ruin and safeguard the monument for future use. And throughout the project, very, very quickly, in the early parts of the project, really, we identified lots of areas where we can implement this new layer of horticulture. And obviously, the castle ruin was a prime target with no roof. It presented us with an absolutely unique planting opportunity. So we've been taking inspiration from the likes of Nympha and Terechia, and trying to implement that here in North Cumbria in the castle ruin at Lowther Castle. So here you can see clematis scampering all over the walls. And we did this garden in 2015, and it's quickly becoming an area of the garden which people come back to visit time and time again. There's a lot of plants in this planting plan which do sort of raise eyebrows with me, really. You know, would these plants survive in this environment in North Cumbria? It's very, very wet, very, very windy. But we've got some of these plants here, like the Tropiolium and the Achebia, really at home within the castle ruin, and all these plants combine beautifully to create a really lovely atmosphere in this space. And then a picture here from in more recent times, where we're beginning to get the likes of the birches and the magnolias. They're slowly getting there now, and eventually we'll have this second layer of planting, this tree and shrub layer underplanted with a selection of perennials, grasses, bulbs, and ferns. The stable courtyard, it also gave us a unique opportunity to implement some new horticulture, but this gave us a slightly different opportunity to perhaps what we're doing in the gardens, which is recapturing that unique atmosphere that we have. And we had an opportunity to look at more of a contemporary design, really. It is now the hub of our visitor attraction. And again, working with Dan, we drew up some plans on what we could possibly do. And we came up with this design of planting different shapes of hornbeams in the stable courtyard. Prior to the planting taking place, it was a very, very stark and, I would say, unwelcoming atmosphere, really. It was an unwelcoming space and quite overwhelming. So the thought of putting 32 trees in there was quite a bold decision, to be honest. But I hope that you'd agree that it does work for us. It works very, very well. And so it just offers us something different when visitors arrive, and it's now more welcoming. And on a day like today, which I hope you can vouch, it's a lovely day out there at the minute. The sun does shine in North Cumbria occasionally, and we can get outside and enjoy the spaces that we have. So here we've planted a selection of what we call box top hornbeams. So these are planted at the southern end of the courtyard and allow for a bit more free movement around the courtyard cafe. So we have seating areas outside, and then also some lovely benches which have got a strong link and strong design feature is on those, is that they connect to the castellations on the courtyard walls. It also poses lots of new challenges for us as gardeners, as you can see there, balancing on top of ladders, pruning trees. It's lots of fun working in there. We have some small perennial beds out there as well, with some young planting in some irises and epimediums and so forth, just to break up some corners of the courtyard. As I mentioned earlier, there's been lots of garden designers influence Lowther over the years, and Thomas Mawson was one of those. This is a sketch from the archives of what we think is the previous rose garden here at Lowther Castle, and we're not taking any inspiration for that going forward. I'm sorry to say. But here, another example of an old rose garden, and it's said that I've read something somewhere that one of the previous head gardeners, Mr. Jeffries, he was here for, I think it was 14 years. Mr. Jeffries was head gardener here at Lowther, and it's said that the rose garden changed several times during his 14-year stay here. So done at a huge cost every time. And here you can see two images of prior to the project beginning. I actually remember walking around the rose garden in 2011, and that's what it looked like on the top left there. It was very much a Christmas tree plantation. And then I came back again in, I think it was the January or the February of 2012, and we discovered that there was the old water feature in the centre, which is the bottom right of the images there. And then all of the tree roots have been removed, and it was being put back to a lawned area. And it sat like this for a number of years, and it was again, this was another area that we highlighted as being another area that we could do some more horticulture as part of this new layer. So again, teaming up with Dan Pearson, we drew up these plans that you saw earlier behind me, and what we've done here is we've stylized a rose flower onto the ground, and it's like a cross section of an Old English rose, and we've that shape is built up with using eglantine rose, and we've got the actual rose garden around the old water feature in the centre. And again, these are some of the images that people always don't relate to with the build of new gardens. It's actually all of the work that goes on underground before anything actually happens. And it was the same case with the courtyard as well, with the tree planting in the courtyard. Huge amounts of money spent on things that people never really see, but help to future-proof the garden and make sure it survives for the future. So this image here, like I say, we've got a cross-section of an Old English rose stylized on the ground. So you have the eglantine rose around the outside, which create these hedges. The hedges back onto the perennial beds, which help to form the petals of the rose flower. In there, we've got really cool colours. We've got mostly whites in there, so we've got geranium white Ness and calamintha. We've got white digitalis. We've got roses planted throughout some of those perennial beds as well, giving us some punchy colours through there. And then you come to the rose garden, which is planted around the central water feature. Marking these gardens out is always fun. I think marking this particular garden out, we used around about 2.5 miles of string, marking out a 2x2 footprint on the ground. Dan produced this lovely plan, which you can see here. It was extremely hard to follow, but it was great to do, and made the whole process of implementing this garden a whole lot easier. And then eventually, a couple of days later, as you can see here, as per plan, we've got this marked out with spray paint onto the ground, and then all the mucky work began with starting to take to bits the old pond. And old records show that there's been a water feature here for a few hundred years now, really. And you can see on the bigger picture here, there was an old sort of stone cairn water feature in the centre. And what we found is that this pond had been kind of, relined with lots of different materials over the years. We unpicked a layer of concrete, and then we found bricks, and then eventually we found the original stone on the bottom, which was used for the original pond. Irrigation as well. Like I say, up in North Cumbria, it does rain a huge amount. Just at the beginning of this year, I think it was 5 weeks in a row where we had named storms following in off the Atlantic time and time again. Recent years, we've seen Cumbria in the Lake District affected by flooding dozens and dozens of times. But we still have the need for irrigation as well. I think the climate is changing. Right now I'm looking out the window and it's lovely blue sunshine, and it's like I say, that need for irrigation. So the team designed and installed this irrigation system. We worked with Dan again on the design of gates and metalwork, and we worked with local suppliers and contractors to help implement the fencing. Garden team helping to do some of that work as well. And then we got onto the planting, and this is the briar hedge going into the ground. Lots of mulching taking place, and as we quickly went round, we began to see the shape of that new garden taking place. The outer hedges here beginning to come together. I think these pictures here were taken in 2018. I think we were quite ambitious at the start of this rose garden project. I thought we thought we would have this done fairly quickly, but it's taken over 2 years now. And one of the biggest achievements of this project so far is actually the metal edging. everything here at Lowther, like I said earlier, is on a grand scale. It's when you want some mulch, it's it's 15 wagon loads. When you need steel edging, it's 2,000 meters of it. When you want some paths, some rubble for some paths, it's hundreds of tons of it. It's a huge big numbers. And when it comes down to planting, again, thousands and thousands of plants needed for these new gardens. But towards the back end of 2018, that's when we started planting this, further planting this garden. So specimen roses going in, trees going in as well. And then we started the process of relining the pond. Once we understood all those many layers that were in that pond, we got it back to a depth that we were happy with, and we started to reline in and getting that water feature up and running. The water feature eventually it is working now. That was a really celebrated moment, really, in more recent times, in just the last few weeks, where we got the water feature working again. And for me, working in the garden for as long as I have now, it's the sound of water, I think, really enlivens a garden and really creates that atmosphere. And we've had that missing from the garden here at Lowther for many years. And to get the water feature going in the rose garden recently was a massive achievement, and a monumental milestone. It was really good. The network of paths, like I say, these took a huge amount of time, and we've got to a point now where we're just beginning to finish those paths off. We have the all of the roses planted. We're just waiting for the last few plants to arrive in the next few weeks, and hopefully, if the current situation lifts, we can very much look forward to welcoming visitors back to the garden very soon to Lowther, and enjoying this new space that we've created. And it's worth pointing out that we haven't stopped there either. I mean, this garden here, Dan's landscape master plan is very much a 25-year vision, and we're only sort of several years into that vision. I think these gardens will go from strength to strength. We've just commissioned Dan to do some more work on the rock garden, Japanese garden, and the sweet scented garden, which will create a lovely link between the orchard, which is at one end, and then the new rose garden, which is at the other. So there's lots to look forward to here at Lowther, and we have a great group of people behind the project, lots of energy behind the project, and like I say, we're very much looking forward to what the future holds here at Lowther, and we hope that we can be a destination to inspire people for the future. And I think that's it.
Thank you, Martin. That was amazing. Would you come back to being on screen now so that we can ask you some questions and talk to you? Lovely. That was amazing.
What a project. Amazing to have the resources to be able to do that, and obviously to such a high quality.
And some of those historic photos, they're such good quality. And I mean, the pigs in the front of the castle, and the courtyard with all the with the horse and carriages, and just amazing to have such good quality archive photos. What fun. We've got a question from Becca Duncan. What type of roses are you planting within? I mean, you talked about elegantine around the edges, didn't you? So can you give us a few examples of what might be in the middle?
Yeah, so we've chosen David Austin roses for the centre of the garden, and they start with cooler colours on the outside, warmer colours on the outside, going to more cooler colours around the centre of the water feature. So there's this whole host from Gertrude Jekyll and Desdemona, Roald Dahl, etc. Around that area. So we obviously it'll be. I think it will be. I mean, we're yet to see it really, but I mean, we've planted all of the roses just recently, and they're quickly growing out there now, and we're busy watering them every day. But we're very much looking forward to that impact that they all give, and obviously the scent that they'll put in that space as well.
And of course, you were working towards the opening, which was happening this summer.
We were, yeah. So we were hoping to. Kind of do like a big launch of the new garden. I think with the current situation, I think we might have to do that at a different time. But certainly we will be looking to open the gates of that new rose garden as soon as possible, really, so that at least there's something that obviously people can come here and see something new, which is what lots of our visitors enjoy coming back to see.
And what a wonderful opportunity to be on a long-term project with Dan Pearson. I mean, my goodness me, the amount of people who would like to be in that position, that's such a fabulous, and I know he thinks very, very highly of you and speaks very highly of you. And how often does Dan visit, and how, can you talk a little bit about your collaboration, how that works?
Yeah, we're extremely fortunate. It's I think when I first met Dan, it was strange really, because he came here and he did the landscape proposal, and met him for the first time, and that was great. But we had a hiccup in the project very, very early on. And unfortunately, we had to kind of sort of just let things sail down the river a little bit for a few years. And it was on the back of, I guess, his time at Chelsea in 2015, where it's probably fair to say that he was very much in the media then. And we'd been working away in the background on things like the Parterre Tapestry Garden, and I was very cautious and conscious at the beginning as well, that we had to implement these plans as per plan. So this one here behind me, I didn't want to start messing with planting plans and things. I thought we need to sort of do it as per plan, because they all very much will, the planting works together, so it was important. And we did our very best, and it still didn't stop me getting nervous. I think it was in 2015 or the beginning of 2016 when he came back and visited after a few years, and we never really spoke during that time. So I'm sure he was nervous about what we'd done on his plans. And obviously I was very nervous, or us as a group of people were very, very nervous about what he thought of our work. And it was really encouraging that the first words he muttered was wow. And it was it was a really, I guess, a really proud moment for us all, really. And I think that kind of set the precedent, really, because I know that he's got a lot of trust in our ability. He has a lot of understanding for the place as well, and the challenges that we have here. And he's very, very he's very, really good at giving confidence, and that's the one thing that I really admire of Dan, is that he's extremely helpful, extremely encouraging, and he's just incredibly supportive of everything that we're doing. And it's great that he goes around sort of talking about what we're doing here. I know he talks about the projects as well, like the Melanin Forest and things like that he's working on, and it's great for us. I mean, so we know we're very, very fond of.
He's very fond of Lowther, isn't he? When he talks about it, you can tell it's very close to his heart.
It is, yeah. And I know he's, following him on Instagram, it's he really gets into his projects, and it's clear to see some probably are more in his heart than or he's got more of an affection for some maybe than others. I don't know, but yeah, I know he's got a real fondness of Lowther, and that's the thing about Lowther. It's I guess it kind of gets under your skin. It really gets into you, and it's you really get into this place. And like I say, the sense of place and the atmosphere that this place has, it's really, really unique. And I think that's what sort of combines us together really, really well.
Yeah. In fact, one of the questions is asking, do you get overwhelmed sometimes about the amount of work that lies ahead of you, or are you, or not, or are you just very excited about it? How do you feel about that?
No, I mean, I get that question asked time and time again, but if you let the scale of this place overwhelm you, then you'll sink very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that we operate is that we kind of it's about just biting bits off, manageable bits here and there. These gardens that we do, like I said, the rose garden, I think we were being very, very ambitious to think that we could get that rose garden done in 14 months or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think I just get terribly excited about the stuff that we have to do. The new plans, and it just presents more opportunity and more more challenges. And for me as an individual, that's what I like. If I wanted to be comfortable in a garden, I wouldn't be here. But this is what I want to do. I want those challenges. The rest of the team want the challenges. They enjoy the challenges. It's a variation to the work that we do, and it's great. So
well, just a couple of very quick questions before we let you go, because I'm sure you've got so much to get on with. But somebody was asking, do you have to keep to historical planting, or have you got a bit of a free rein with what you can choose in terms of planting? How or is it?
We've got a bit of a free rein, to be honest. We're not restricted with planting at all. We still we have to respect some of the trees and the shrubs that potentially are historically part of this landscape. But otherwise, new plantings, no, we're not restricted at all. We can plant for the future.
Well, there's been lots of comments, not just about Lowther and about the project, but also your presentation, and saying what a wonderful presentation and how fantastic it is, and clear and lovely. Just so lots and lots of very positive comments, and thank you. But I think probably the best one to end with is Annie Peckham. Whether it's Annie from Peckham or Annie Peckham, she says, "I think you have the best job."
Thank you very much, Annie. Thank you very much.
I think a few of us might be quite jealous about that. And there was one other quick question. There are no plans to put the roof back on the ruin, I assume. That garden is going to stay. Oh, good.
Yeah. No, there's no plans to put the roof back on the ruin. We will stabilise the rest of the ruin, and we will be planting more gardens throughout the ruin. So there's a massive amount of ground to go out to do some more gardens, and we very much look forward to that, and we've got some exciting plans in place for that.
Fabulous. Well, Martin, thank you so much. We could talk to you for hours, but I know that you've got a lot to do. But I think we should also just mention, obviously, because yes, the Rose Garden was supposed to open this summer, but we also have an event planned with Dan that was sold out, which was planned for June. Now we will be organising a new date for that, and we do have a date in hand. So if there's anybody actually watching today, listening today, who is booked onto that or is on the waiting list, we will be in contact with you, and it is all in hand. We think that June is not going to be possible, so we have that all in hand, and we will be in contact. So fear not. Let's just keep
Annie, are we going to say anything about, we are having a conversation tomorrow afternoon, aren't we?
Well, it's supposed to be top secret. No, you're hopeless at secrets. Yeah, we're going to be. Let's just drop a hint. Let's just drop a hint that we're talking to somebody who's heavily involved with Lowther tomorrow, not on the Tea Time Talk, but for a Tea Time Talk. So
yes.
Don't give the game away, Noel.
You got to keep it.
Anyway, we had 115 people tuning in, Martin.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, and thank you for putting so much time into getting that. And please,
wonderful images, really good presentation. We had a lot.
Absolutely. And for people who don't follow Martin on Instagram, I suggest you do, because it's lovely to see his images and little movies and things. So please do follow him, and of course Lowther as well. I think that's it, isn't it? Superb. So many brilliant comments. Thank you very much.